Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, the Intacct Quarterly Update Q4 for 2014. You will see your webinar pane in front of you. Please note that the orange arrow will allow you to minimize or maximize the pane. If it is minimized, simply click on the orange arrow to bring it back. Feel free to submit any questions that you have for our presenters throughout the duration of the webinar. Our presenters will handle questions at the end as time permits. If you're using your telephone to listen in on our webinar, please make sure you select Use Telephone. If you're listening through computer speakers, please select Use Mic and Speakers. If you have the incorrect setting selected, it will produce an echo sound. And with that, I would like to introduce our presenters for today. First up, we have Scott Schimberg. Scott has a mixture of industry experience where he's held positions such as Assistant Controller, Controller, and VP of Finance. Scott became a CMA in 1995 and obtained his CPA certificate in 2002. Scott has over 13 years of consulting experience where he's helped companies implement ERP systems. Next, we have Greg Block. Greg is a senior manager with Armanino. Greg has served as a CFO for middle market companies where he successfully helped businesses achieve significant growth objectives as well as manage mergers and acquisitions. Greg has been involved in implementing software solutions throughout his career and has been implementing software as a consultant since 2004. Greg is also a CPA and certified Intacct implementation consultant. With that, let's jump into our learning objectives today. Participants will understand features released by Intacct in Q4 of 2014, refresh year-end tips, learn about new payment methods, as well as get an overview of the 2015 Intacct release schedule. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg.
Thank you. So there's a few new things that are going on with 1099 printing. Intacct has on their form centers their specific 1099 and 1096s. To get to that, you can go from the home page under Resources and click on the Form Center. Now, we just want to point out that you can use tax forms from other vendors, but the alignment is not guaranteed, and that's the reason why that Intacct is making their forms available. They have specifically designed them to work with Intacct, and you don't have to worry about trying to moving the number of inches or micro inches on each of the when you're trying to align to the form. We want to remind you from a viewpoint that it's a good idea to close months in Intacct to avoid postings to the wrong periods. As many of you are aware, Intacct is year-end is a soft close. There's no separate year-end process required. You don't have to run that. So please close your periods out. We all have habits of forgetting to use the new year, and we end up posting something to the wrong year. If you need to reopen a closed period, you can select the general ledger only, or you can also include your individual modules. If you just open without selecting the modules, you'll have access to journal entries only, and then if you pick the individual modules, then you can have access to those modules if you need it. Another method that you can use, and this is controlled by permissions, that you can use adjusting journals to post to closed periods instead of reopening the periods. The key takeaway on adjusting journals is that you have to have the permissions to use them, and the period has to be closed. If the period is not closed, you would be just using a regular journal entry. Move to the next slide. Intacct is also made available out-of-balance multi-currency journal uploads, a feature to help make that work easier for you. The process that happens when you're uploading a multi-currency journal entry is during the upload, the amounts are converted to the base currency, and then there's a rounding process that may cause an out-of-balance. So Intacct has now made available a rounding account option in the general ledger, and the way you access that is from the general ledger. You open Setup, and then from the GL Setup option, you go into Configure General Ledger, and then there's a multi-currency management feature that's been there all along. It's been enabled. It would have been enabled for you to use that. And then there's now a new rounding account drop-down box, and you would go in and select the drop-down box that and select the account that you want to use. Move to the next slide. For those of you that are using the Intacct revenue recognition and using specifically the % complete, it used to be a situation that when you went in and if you had, and went in and tried to post the entry would be based upon, the posting date would be based upon the actual period you're in when you're trying to post it, and you did not have the capability to edit that, and it used to require you to go in and make a journal entry to you'd post it and then you go back and create a correcting entry to get it into the right period. So Intacct's now made available that feature to be editable. There's no configuration required. You would just run your from order entry, the activities, your revenue recognition schedule, and you would view and select those entries to edit, bring that up, and then in that entry, when you turn on the edit, the posting date is now a field that is editable, and you can go in and change that posting date to a different field. All right. Intacct has also made some additional enhancements in the in their Intacct Global Consolidation module, and so what they've made available is an additional Elimination Accounts tab. And what this allows you to do is to add other additional accounts above and beyond the inter-entity and inter-payable accounts that Intacct had already previously set up. So if you may have an example where you have on one of the subsidiaries there's a revenue account, and then on another one of the subsidiaries there's an expense account that you want to inter-eliminate. And so you can set those up. When you run the consolidations, they're automatically eliminated. So that's one aspect. We'll look at that in a little more detail here shortly. There's also, they've made another time-saving enhancement for reconsolidating past periods. And in the past, when you reconsolidated, it would run through the entire consolidation. Now there is a button that's that you can update the consolidation with changes only. So if you check that box and then consolidate now, it only goes out and looks for the transactions that haven't previously been consolidated. And so it's designed to speed up the process for those of you that have a consolidation that takes some time to run. With that, we'll want to go over and look at actually into Intacct. All right, I mentioned that we wanted to look a little bit more at the IGC ability to do auto eliminations. Now, one of the key takeaways on this is that this feature is only available before you start any consolidations. So if you've already started consolidations, a consolidation book, you cannot turn this feature on. If you want to use it, you would need to create another consolidation book and do the reconsolidations. So I am currently in IGC. I have IGC open. It's accessed from your global consolidations, and I've gone into the book setup. And in that book setup, you have the ability here to define the information. This is the standard information. Nothing has changed on this page. You then have entities to consolidate, and you notice that there's this new tab called Elimination Accounts. And you would go in to edit this, and you would go in and checkbox this inter-entity auto-elimination. As I mentioned earlier, if you've already consolidated something in a book, this box is not able to be checked. You can only do it in a brand new book before you do any consolidations. You then have the ability here in the elimination accounts to go to your general ledger list here. It's a listing of all your accounts, and you can just simply add the information to do so, and these accounts then become automatically eliminated for you. And then in the reports, when we go ahead and run that report, and grabbing it from my other screen here, you'll see in the report here the dollar amounts for those accounts are now creating auto eliminations for you. All right, back over to Scott.
Well, thank you, Greg. And we're going to talk about two additional features within Intacct, or that can be deployed in Intacct, around the payment process. And the focus here is on automating the payable process. Then the first one we'll talk about is the Amex check management solution, and then we'll talk about how you can deploy electronic payments around the world. So if you go outside of the U.S., where U.S. has a predominant check printing process, outside of the U.S., it's a lot of electronic payment files that need to get submitted to the bank instead of having printed checks. And there's a great solution that can resolve that pain point. So if we go into talk about the Amex check delivery process, it's really what this tool is designed to do is to automate the check printing. So within Intacct, when you go to the approve checks or payments, you get to a point where you're then needing to buy check stock, envelopes, print the check. So you need a printer, toner, and that type of activity. And the intent is to help save that level of effort, meaning if you deploy this and you're having the check printing, all of that activity is done via the Intacct Amex payment process. So the cost savings comes out as not having to have that paper check stock and that type of activity, and that the distribution of the checks comes from Amex. And so it's a pretty simple, straightforward process that comes into play. There is a setup of the account, of the bank accounts, select the bills for payment, and then you submit and approve them. And then the Intacct Amex solution goes out and does the, print them, puts them in the envelope, and mails them for you. And then it can also automate the posting, and we'll talk about that over the next couple slides. It is a very simple process to get set up. The screen here that we're showing is the subscriptions, so you do need to subscribe to the outsourced payments services functionality. Once you're in the system and you're configuring the payment services, you'll go in and you'll define which bank accounts you want to use with the service. The great part about this is it's not requiring you to change banks or change anything. It is a check that is drawn on your bank account to be used. So it's really just defining which banks do you want to use this with. And then you can also have it automated that once you approve the payments, it gets automatically sent over to Amex for printing the check. Or you can have a manual process of the check gets approved and you send them a upload, if you will. It's all integrated. It's really clicking a button on the manual process, but you can have that automated or not. You can also have some different options on the descriptions that are posted on the checks. A nice tool about this is you do need to define the vendors that it would be set up on, and there is a nice process to go out and get them activated for all of the vendors. It's a window that you can go in and select your vendors that you'd want this to apply to. So once you start paying your bills, you'll notice on the Select Bills to Pay screen, the last option on the item is Check Delivery. That's the item that you would select for the process of selecting the bills and then paying the bills as the payment methods. And then once you're in the process, you can manually manage the checks to be sent, or you can automate that step, and you will get a confirmation that the check has been printed and sent. And then here's just a sample of the check layout, and you can have the detail on the invoice as well, or on the check stub. And then it also comes back with the status of once the check has been mailed. And then the cost for this is it's a twofold piece. One is a annual fee of $600, and then there's also a transactional fee that comes into play, and it's $150 per 100 checks with a minimum of 1,000 checks per annual that comes into play. So, if you print 1,001 checks, you would need 11 of the 100 check packs. So just for clarity. And then to talk a little bit more around international payments, fairly similar type concept of what we have on the Amex piece of it, but this is really what we're doing is going into the Intacct solution, configuring the multi-currency banks. So what this enables us to do is you could have a bank in like the UK that uses a specific file layout for receiving payment information. We call that a template, and we can map in that template into the Intacct system so that it is compatible with your bank. And so we would get that piece of it configured. The bills would get created in your normal AP process, and then there would be a new process around creating the international ACH request and batch file that comes out. And so just a couple screenshots to give you the concept of how it works and feels within your Intacct system. It does have the navigate to the ACH, and you can then set up your banks, and you set them up by the currencies that would be paid. Within the bank setup, you'll set in the checking account information and the key information that you need for your bank. And then on the accounts payable screen that we're showing here, the transactions that come in, and you're posting a transaction in GBP in the UK, you note that on the invoice that's coming in and post that just as normal as what you would do. But then when it comes time to sending out the payment batch file, you go back into the international ACH process, and you would select those bills for payment to generate the file. And it's a pretty simple process to go in. You do a range of vendors, the due date and the amount, or the currency that you're paying, and save that file to go out. And then it's a matter of just transmitting that file to your bank, and that is a manual process of transmitting the file. The cost of that, it's an annual subscription of $1,800, which includes 4 templates. So if you have, it depends on each bank. Seems to be a little bit different in terms of the layout that they need or file format. Some banks work with one format for all electronic payments, and some work with multiple file layouts depending upon the type of payment, electronic payment actually going out. And so we typically see 4 templates is great to get a company started, but if you needed an additional template, it would be just a $200 for that software subscription. Both of these systems, in terms of setting up and configuring in the system to get it working within your system, is a couple hours worth of work in total to get it going. So it's a great value process in terms of automating your payment solutions. And then in terms of the next sets of releases from Intacct, here's the calendar that will come, or that is scheduled with Intacct. As we've seen in this last Q4 of 2014, the actual date got shifted a little bit. We will have these quarterly updates bringing you what's new and active within the system 2 to 3 weeks after the launch of the product that comes out after the actual date. But here's we'll be just trailing a couple weeks after these dates that are listed up here.
Great, thanks, Scott. We also wanted to share some ways your peers are finding additional value in their Intacct system. Here we have Kcura. Kcura is a software company which helps corporations, law firms, government agencies meet the challenges of managing large volumes of electronic evidence during investigations or litigation. And while we were in conversation with Kcura, we realized along with Intacct, they also had some significant needs in terms of their budgeting and forecasting needs. So they were looking for a much more robust solution versus what they had at the time, which was a very manual process as well as a very disjointed process. And at that time, we introduced them to Adaptive Insights, which is a leader in the budgeting, forecasting, CPM world. And with the tight integration that Armanino has built between Intacct and Adaptive Insights, Kcura was really able to achieve a very seamless and robust process between the two applications. And the majority of what they're using the joint applications is for migrating their trial balances, transactions, deferred revenue from Intacct to Adaptive Insights. They use that information to do their final budgets within Adaptive and then bring that data back into Intacct for a complete cycle. And as you'll see, they've found a lot of value which has helped them free up more time for month-end analysis and setting the stage for providing decision makers with mid-month revenue snapshots. And if some of you attended Advantage, you heard Rob Reed, the CEO of Intacct, say, at minimum, if you haven't integrated 2 to 3 other applications with Intacct, you're not really realizing the true value of your cloud applications. And Armanino has made some very significant investments in building prepackaged integrations to other key applications within your business. One way we really like or ask clients to think about it is if there's a process that you're just doing repeatedly throughout the week, which is not really a value-added task, then that's probably a process that can be automated and less manual. And some key applications you want to think about in the business are your CRM, your budgeting forecasting tool, your HRIS system. These are all applications, that there is a lot of value to integrate between Intacct, and Armanino has some prepackaged solutions which can help you realize that value. So with that, I think we'll open it up to the audience for any questions. Feel free to submit them using your webinar pane.
Great. And the first question that came in is, do we know what will be released in the next Intacct release? And unfortunately, Intacct doesn't provide a advanced notification of the specific things that will come out in the release this early. So
Scott,
that's to be pending.
Scott,
Yes,
it's Greg. They do have put out on the home page the planned information. So there is a winter 2015 out on the home page. It was just released on the 13th of January.
Oh, super.
And then just as an FYI to everyone, this is Intacct. This is what Intacct plans to do. And they reserve the right to not release something as they go through their final QAs. They like to be as very aggressive as possible in terms of rolling things out, and so that's the trade-off that we have. But it is out there on showing what they target to release in February.
And another question that's coming in is if we want to use either the ACH or international payments or the Amex, how do we get that started? And real easy, let us know either via email or at the end of this session, and we'll reach out to you and get you a quote for that to sign off on.
All right. I think that's all of the questions. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Please note that there will be an exit survey that pops up as you exit the session. If you could please help us fill out those questions. It helps us improve for future webinars as well. You see Greg and Scott's contact information in the screen in front of you. Please feel free to reach out to them directly should you have any further questions. All right. Thank you so much and have a great day.